What is up, everybody? Welcome to Payrolling. Today's show, I interview Paul Abel. He is the CEO of Poster Elite and also founder of OSHA for Less. They provide labor law poster subscriptions as a service, along with many other things. He's got a really cool story where he shares about how he started this company, his awesome journey from where he was to where he is today. Over the course of that journey, he went from nearly 50 employees, reduced all the way down to just over 10, and increased sales, increased his bottom line substantially during that time, all while growing. So really cool stuff he shares with you in this episode about how to delegate, how to find the right people, how to create internal systems and operations that are set up for long-term success. I think you're going to get a ton out of it. I know I did. And maybe you'll even look to them for your labor law posters like we do. I hope that you enjoy this episode. If you do, please leave us a 5-star review and tell somebody about it. We get hundreds of listens every episode, but I know that there are other people out there in the payroll and HR space who'd love to hear this. So please share it with a friend. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to Payrolling, the show where you will learn how to operate and grow your payroll business from the most dynamic minds in the business. If your company offers payroll services, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Matt Vady. Let's go.
Are you tired of dealing with payroll? Would you just like to finally get out of this industry and start focusing on what you actually do best, whether you're a CPA, healthcare broker, whatever your core discipline is? You started offering payroll services because you thought it would be a great value add. And then you quickly realized, well, this is consuming way more time for not enough money than I originally thought. Did you know that we are actively acquiring payroll books of business? We would love to work with you to identify if we can help you to partner with the right group that makes sense for an exit for you, but creates consistency in how you continue to treat your clients. If you're interested in learning more about Guru's acquisition services, simply go to guru.co/acquisitions. That's GUROO.co/acquisitions.
Most people get into the compliance space, they're attorneys or they CPAs or, in my business, the legacy business is we print posters. We're more of a SaaS-based company now than we are a physical product-based company. And, I got into the business with a very basic business plan. And the business plan was a filing cabinet that had lawsuits, and it was all the lawsuits and fines that I had to deal with when I was running my bagel business, which was part of our family business. So prior to founding, which is Elite Business Ventures, and Poster Elite is a division of it, is, my family at that time, there was 100 restaurants between Burger Kings and I did the bagel business, which was Brugger's Bagels. Actually, they had some Brugger's Bagels in South Carolina as well.
Yeah, my wife's a huge fan of Brugger's Bagels.
Yeah. So, and so I was the sweat equity partner in the family business after working in the Burger Kings and so forth at the age of 29, and we signed up and we got the development rights for San Diego to build out Brugger's Bagels. And it was 15 stores in 5 years with a production facility. And so, the family was the money, I was the sweat equity. And basically, it was a great experience. I mean, it allowed me to understand real estate because of all the leases involved with it. When I left or sold my shares, we had, over 1,000 employees in the bagel side of the business. Collectively, there were several thousand. And, my job at the end was really dealing with, just employee related issues and landlord related issues And California, right? So at that time, California was the only state, or one of the only states, that had all this litigious environment, but it seems like that's spread around the country right now. And I think governors in New York and California and even Texas now, which is crazy, compliance has expanded. But so there's two things that I think I would share. The one is being a minority partner, sweat equity partner in a family business. And that touches a lot of nerves, right? So one, there's a lot of, as you know, we, founded these different groups, these payroll groups that we help and we coach to run their businesses based upon our experiences. And one of the groups are all, we call them the YPG, right? The Young Payroll Group. And, a lot of them we're sweat equity partners. We're brought on investors and how to deal with that. So, I've taken that experience and I help our payroll clients deal on how to buy out partners or how to work with the transactional side of business. And that's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And then there's the dynamics where there's succession. There's a lot of our payroll clients that, basically their dad founded it or their uncle or family member, and they're working in the business and there's a succession issue. So I have experience in that part of it. But the main experience in the business model is all the lawsuits and fines that I had to deal with running the business. And, I founded this company 15 years ago, and the vision of the company was 100% to simplify compliance. That was the number one thing, is how do we make it simple? And became from the story of how it got started is we had a production facility that we a commissary where we manufactured the bagels, the bagel dough, and then we had trucks that would transport it to the various locations. And we had a worker that was cleaning one of the bagel machines, and as they were cleaning it, another worker was mopping the floor in the factory and saw that, didn't want to get water on the socket, so plugged in the machine while the other employee's hand was in the hopper and chopped off a finger.
Oh, no.
So at this stage, and keep in mind, we're probably close to 100 restaurants in the family business. So it's a pretty large company, franchised as well. So you would think that that there would be a playbook on how to deal with this. You would think, right? So I thought what I did right is I also have a military background as a combat medic. So we did perform a little bit of first aid. Everything was taken care of. Put the finger in a little Ziploc on ice.
Yikes.
Of course, we may have made cranberry bagels that day. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. I know. I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to laugh about the missing finger. I'm hopeful that enough time has passed that this is okay.
Exactly. So anyhow, so you call, you do what you think's right. You call the, the ambulance. You call workers' comp. I knew that well enough, and thank God everything worked out. The work, she had the finger reattached, but the emergency room notified OSHA that there was a serious injury in my facility. So I get a call from OSHA. This is Cal OSHA, but similarly, first cousin of OSHA. And the guy says to me, hey, I want to let you know that the emergency room notified me. Us that you had a serious injury, and now we, an obligation to inspect your facility to ensure that it's a safe environment for your workers. And so I said, yeah, come on in. I got no problem with it. And guy comes in the following day and introduces himself. And in his introduction, he's, gives me his name, his badge number. He says, are you aware, and this is California specific, what I'm mentioning now, that you're supposed to notify OSHA within 8 hours of a serious amputation? I'm going, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't know that I needed to do that. And he takes out his ticket book and he starts writing me up. He says to me, as a matter of fact, if you should have these posters that are posted in your workplace that actually shows that. So what I'm going to do is walk around your facility. Where are your posters? And I had a wall that had all these little pieces of paper on it, and I didn't know what the hell I needed or didn't need. Who checks their freaking posters, right? So that was the first $5,000 citation he actually pointed out on the poster where it says you need to notify OSHA. Or
Oh, wow.
And if you don't have it. And so kind of long story short, he walked around my facility and he cited me over $40,000, in violations. I mean, we had a first aid kit, but when he opened up, it was empty because there was nobody checks their first aid kit. So we had a forklift. This is another interesting one. When you're looking at, if you're in the payroll business and you're helping an employer and you go to that employer's warehouse and you see a whole bunch of forklifts, more than likely, if it's an entrepreneurial warehouse or manufacturer, that guy bought the forklift from his neighbor or somebody down the road on sale, right?
Right.
And guess what? He didn't know that everybody has to be certified to drive the forklift.
Mm.
So we didn't realize we needed a forklift until we needed a forklift, right?
Yeah.
In the factory. So I bought one from the neighbor, right? You did one of those deals. And then the OSHA guy goes, well, are you certified? I'm getting no. Do I need to be certified? So nobody tells you this stuff, right, Matt? Nobody tells you. So
something tells me that he went through a lot of tickets in that book that day.
Oh, it was the best one was he says to me, do you have your injury illness prevention program, your IIPP? And I'm going, of course I do. And I pulled out my employment manual. And that basically you're aware of, I mean, you're in the payroll industry, and I'm proudly give it to him. He goes, no, your safety manual, you have to have safety meetings. I'm going, serious? By the way, I want to recap. This is a franchise, okay? This is we're a big company. We got CFOs, we got, district managers, but we didn't even know at our level that we needed to do this. And that's when the light came on. I said, if I ever start another business, I'm going to make information readily available to other employers, small and medium-sized businesses, to make sure they don't have to go through what I'm going through. And then I basically pulled out the OSHA, I'd subscribed, I got the OSHA manual, started reading the OSHA manual. I'm going, oh my God, you got to do all of this stuff? Nobody told me that. So then when I, in another podcast, we'll talk about family businesses and how to deal with sweat equity. But what came out of this is I really didn't want to be in the family business anymore. And I started this company 15 years ago based upon that experience that I had, that nobody told me what I needed. Nobody told me what I needed. So where this comes into play now, I'm going to toggle a little bit for a payroll company. I want payroll companies to know that they're servicing an employer. So that's one of the things, Matt, and just pivoting the conversation slightly. We help payroll companies book appointments using very creative ways of booking appointments. We have trusted advisor training. We just did work now with the most probably the fourth largest payroll company on how to maximize webinars that they have in order to help their salespeople get appointments. And one of the reasons we're so successful, and this has got nothing to do with posters, right? It's got nothing to do with compliance, is to explain to the sales force that they're not there selling something. You see, I wouldn't have experienced the pain and suffering of not only my worker getting injured, which was terrible. In addition to that, you know what a distraction it was, having to deal with this OSHA thing. If I had a good sales rep that came into my business and said, hey, I'm going to do your payroll for you, but in addition, I've got all these other services that are going to help you run your business, they would have saved me. And Matt, what I find is most salespeople in the payroll industry and all over the world, you're going to have your super salespeople that are amazing, but the majority just want to sell payroll and run out the door. Hoping that the client is not going to cancel the contract. Instead of looking at the client and going, great, let me show you how else I can help you. And that's one of the messages that I want to really, impact today is the payroll industry talks a lot about software, and this is what my software does, and these are the reports that you can pull. That's great. You have to do that. But no, you're really helping an employer pay their workers on time. You're really helping an employer avoid fines and lawsuits by providing them up-to-date employment manuals. You're really helping an employer by giving them a time and attendance system that's going to prevent them from dealing with Department of Labor wage and hour issues. You're not selling the employer. Now, I'm going back to my story. I suffered because no great salesperson came to me. Mm. So that's how this whole mindset of how my company runs is 100% we service the employer by providing that employer solutions that help them avoid fines and lawsuits. Our niche is in the labor law notice business. Matt, we just launched today, eposterservice.com. And it's a remote worker platform for labor law postings that we patented. So we patented the platform. We currently have over 100,000 users on it, but this is the first time that we've done a direct piece on it. So we specialize in helping employers. So let's take the remote where we are today in COVID. Most employers don't know that they're at risk of having workers no longer in their office, but working in a remote environment. Could be a different city, different county, different state. Well, there's legalities involved, and the payroll industry right now could be unbelievable euros to those employers, and their businesses can grow tremendously by helping employers deal with these complexities.
Let's pause there for a second, and I want to come back to what you guys do because I think it's important. But you mentioned a few things in there that I want to visit, and first and foremost, you kind of touched on something that I love that happens in this industry because it means more business for us, but hopefully for the folks out there that are listening that are regional and localized payroll and HR service providers, is that too many sales professionals go out and they do what I call weeing all over yourself, right? Like it's, we are this, we are that, we are great, we are an awesome solution. And to your point, if I'm an ADP rep, they process that payroll twice and then I run for the hills because I already got my commission check and I know that they can't claw that back from me and I'm very happy. And so I'm not worried about upsells. I'm just worried about getting what I can and getting while the getting's good. But, for us to be strategic partners to our clients and to be trusted advisors, we have to have their best interests in mind. And the client has to be the hero, not us, right? And that's when we start getting into more you phrasing instead of we phrasing, which is something that we talk a lot about. And I know your team does a great job when you're training, Brittany working with the team. Quick shout out to Brittany out there. She's a grinder. She's awesome. And I know she does a great job training folks on how to sell better and how to use your tools as a way to gain access and all that great stuff. But what I really want to do is kind of fast forward back to today. I think for our payroll service bureau owners out there, you have a really great philosophy around how you run your business. And it hasn't always been this way from what I understand, but I know you're really hyper-focused on the who, not how. And you've also gone through a massive transformation in your business over the last few years. Why don't you share with us a little bit about some of the changes you've made and the impact that's had on your company?
Absolutely, Matt. No different to a lot of was probably the listeners or friends of yours in the payroll industry or business owners. When you start your company, it's like having a kid, right? There's no manual, right? You never know when the kid needs a diaper change, and it's just, or when it's going to get sick, or it's just it's a baby, yeah. And you try to do it all. And so I my first 5 years, it's like painting moving cars. I mean, just the one thing that, it's really stressful because you've got cash flow problems. You don't exactly know what your message is. You're having a little bit of fun because you're making some cash selling stuff, but you don't have any structure. Okay. You're just really running your business day to day without any real good vision or planning because you're trying to survive. Okay. You're just trying to survive. You got small kids at this stage, you're in your 30s or 40s, you're newly married, you got all these forces that are around you, and you just don't have white time, thinking time to really understand what you're doing and where you're going. So the first 5 years, we survived, we did pretty decent, but Matt, I gained weight. I lost my hair. I got sick. That's another thing, you're a lot of illness. I actually heard recently that most people with back pain are at the ages of 35 to 50. And it's not an orthopedic problem, it's a mental problem that manifests in back pain.
Hmm.
Most back surgeries are 35 to 40-year-olds. So it just, the stress really causes physical issues, sleep issues and health issues. And I just, after 5 years, there's got to be a better way. There's just no way that this, makes sense. And then I joined Vistage, which is a peer group, where you're with like-minded, owners of companies and CEOs. And then I found that didn't work for me because I'm a true entrepreneur and I didn't like being in a peer group with hired guns. Okay. Because my brain works differently. And I got dyslexia, I got ADD. I'm a typical entrepreneur, ADD, ADHD. I'm a founder that is a typical founder. And I sat in this Vistage room and there were, hired guns, phenomenal, which are good friends. And by the way, they work for me right now, a lot of them in my company. But that was the other share is if you're a true entrepreneur, you need to be in a collaborative environment with other like-minded people, because the one thing I found in my first 5 years, how lonely it was, Matt. My wife, I love her to death. And, all of us engage on the startups, we bring our wives in, right? Oh my God, talk about another complexity, right? I realized I needed a community around me. I realized how frustrating it was. And so I tried Vistage for a few years. It was great. It gave me an understanding of how things work. And then funny enough, it was a couple of payroll clients. I think it was Andy in New Mexico who I spoke to at one of the conferences. And I kept on asking entrepreneurial founders, what are you doing how do you deal with all this stress in life? It's just too much. How do you, and the name strategic coach came up a few times. And, so I decided, okay, I'm going to look into that. And I joined a strategic coach. It's expensive. Okay. There's different levels and, it's a commitment. And I just decided that if I'm going to make a change, I'm going to have to be coached. The best athletes in the world. And this is something that, Tiger Woods, when he won the first Masters, the next day he wanted to improve his swing, right? The guy's on top of his game. I realized, okay, I need a coach. I got to learn how to do this. And so that was the one thing is I joined this community called Strategic Coach, which has done wonderful things. And the other thing is I started understanding that I'm not running my meetings effectively. I'm not running the business efficiently. And I came across EOS. Some people call it traction, EOS. And I looked at both the models and I'm going, okay, EOS is a operating system to run your business. And I read the books and stuff and I'm going, okay, here's a formula, here's a system that I can bolt onto. And strategic coaches for self-development. And I didn't have a lot of money to waste. Young kids, colleges, saving for college, but I made the investment. And it was a big investment. Collectively, it was about $60,000 a year. Okay. But I looked at it, I'm going, you know what? That's what my kid's college is going to cost. I'm going to have to invest this in my 18-year-old whose brain's not developed yet. And I'm not going to invest it in me. And that was my mindset shift. I'm going, my kids need braces or whatever. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on our kids without blinking an eye. But I'm not spending any money on my self-development or my business. So I made that commitment. And that's the first thing was the commitment, right? If you don't have the commitment, you don't have the courage to make the commitment, you're just never going to make it happen. And then we installed this EOS process. And it just has changed my life. I don't think that I could ever work as I invest in companies as well, with any company that doesn't use a process or a system like EOS, which is based on the Rockefeller habits. There are other ones. There's 3 or 4 other ones that are out there. There's individuals that use it, but it's all based upon Rockefeller habits. And so that was the first thing. It gave me a platform on how to structure the company, how to take the vision and put it down on paper. Once we got there, Matt, then I looked at it and it became clear that there are some things we really shouldn't be doing. And that's another thing that happens when you're in the weeds and you're building your company. You still do things in your company that you did when you needed to do it. And 5 years later, you're still doing it. So part of the EOS process is you have to document every single process and procedure. And what I found, and this is one of the shares that I'd like to share whoever is listening to this, is most companies will have the person doing the task do the documentation. That is an absolute mistake. And I wasted a lot of time and money on that, because what I realized is that person doing the task has all these shortcuts and tribal knowledge that if they left tomorrow and somebody else had to sit in their seat, the documentation makes no sense.
So how did you overcome that?
I realized I identified the problem. Okay. So the issue was I couldn't get documentation that was clear out of my team. So I identified the problem. How I solved the problem is, again, I had to commit. And I hired a project manager, cost me about $70,000 a year, that her one job was to basically work with every division of the company. And we took our most critical top 5 processes that we had. And we said, okay, you got to go and see, how do we do this? And the end result is that you have to document this thing, that it is so well documented that I'm going to hire a temp that can do the job without ever being in that seat. So I outsourced it to a project manager that could go and understand how it works. And then we documented and we put it into a system called Process Street. What an unbelievable, I think we pay like $200 a year for Process Street and it runs our whole business for us. So that's important, is we first identified, so we optimized the process. Then and by the way, I learned this from a guy by the name of Ari Mazel. Ari Mazel has a podcast called Less Doing. Brilliant guy. And so he talks about you have to optimize and then you automate. Okay, so using technologies like Zapier and basically moving data from one place to another is very affordable and simple, but you need the who, okay, to do this. So Matt, if you think that you, the guy, as the business owner that has to do this, that's the other mistake I made. No, you hire somebody who's the who to do the how. So I hired somebody to make sure that the documentation is done. We put it into a system called Process Street. So for example, Matt, do you understand when a poster changes? So if you take a look at the California labor law poster, I think it's got like 21 different notices on it. There's 6 or 7 different divisions of the government that we have to track, etc. But when a poster change, we have to do the research, we have to update the poster, we got to do the artwork, we have to proof it, we have to throw away the old posters, we got to update our systems. It's maybe 100 steps, okay, in doing it with multiple people. On that one process, I used to have 6 people working on that process. We now have a half a person. So we had 6 humans, average wage, it's probably making I'd say between $40,000 and $70,000 a year, individuals working on that process, that now I have a half a person doing it. Because we have workflow management so well designed, and it works. It works. And I know it works because I see a dashboard every day, and the dashboard tells me what's off track. I don't care what's on track.
Where are
And
you
that's
seeing that
all I
dashboard?
measure.
What's that
What's
in?
that?
What's the dashboard in?
So it's data visualization. I use a product called Cyfe, CYFE.com. And what I love about Cyfe is you can create a dashboard from multiple technologies into one sheet. So for example, we use Zoho as a platform. So I have some dashboards from the CRM in Cyfe. But sometimes we use a Google Sheet. Well, guess what? It shows up in my Cyfe dashboard. It's, again, very inexpensive, world-class technology that you get to see everything that you need to see. But it's in the setup. It's in the setup. Right. You got to know what you're looking for. None of these technologies work, and none of these system works, Matt, if you don't know what the end looks like. And you have to have the ability to articulate it to a project manager or to a who that will figure out the other who's potentially to do the house.
Right.
So Matt, we went from close to 50 employees, and we were doing maybe 40% of the revenue we're doing now, to where I have, if I take myself off the payroll and my wife off the payroll and my father-in-law, who's an aeronautical engineer, retired, who fixes our machines, I think we got 15 employees. And we're a seven-figure company. And we print and ship close to 700,000 posters a year. So I've innovated, optimized, and outsourced manufacturing. Matt, today's the launch of eposterservice.com, the remote worker platform. It's an integrated platform that basically, if you sign up to this, or your employers, your customer signs up to us, and they load a list of their remote workers, it will populate the right notices, the correct notices on a federal level, a state level, a county level, and a city level for that remote worker in that remote worker's dashboard for them to sign off. And I patented that system, and I didn't hire one person. We just rolled out was probably the fourth largest payroll company. It was about 35,000 posters to their clients. Wow. It was over $1 million deal. We didn't hire one employee. We shipped out 35,000 posters in 10 days from because we private label it. And we didn't hire one employee.
Let me ask you a question. Are you the go-to person in your market for payroll and HR? Are you the first face and name somebody thinks of when they think about who am I going to refer this person that needs help with their payroll and HR support? If not, you might want to look into our executive LinkedIn management service through Underdog Digital. Underdog Digital is a sponsor of this show, and they've seen results such as, I'm looking at one profile right here where over the course of 6 months, they increased views by over 200%, more than 600,000 views on these posts in less than 6 months. Another one, plus 1,000% increase in 8 new conversations in the first 30 days. This is a tremendous service to help you to become the go-to person for payroll and HR outsourcing in your market. They create content for you, engage with other people in your space, send connection requests, and do outreach to generate conversations that do nothing more than create valuable relationships with your target audience. If you're interested in learning more about Underdog Digital's executive LinkedIn management service, go to underdogdigital.co. That's underdogdigital.co. I love that. You hit on so many great things in there. So I love the outside perspective piece, right? Whether you hire somebody, whether you work with a consultant, we've struggled with this over the years as well, right? Where it's, we've tried to design processes for the last 7 years and with minimal success. We have reams and reams of things that are documented that new people don't even look at when they come on board. And, it just sits there dormant. And then the new person rewrites it. And then finally, we bucked up like you and we hired some outside people to look at it with a new lens and to start to document things. And you can already see the difference in how they view a workflow from their experience of creating workflows for a living versus us who are just trying to make things fit in a way of all we know, which is only our business really at the end of the day. So the who, not how is so important when it comes to that. And that's just incredible, the results you guys have seen. And I want to come back to, because I know we only got a few minutes left here, the peer mentoring piece and the relationship with peers just in general. And I want to talk about it both from the informal and the formal perspective. You and I have a mutual friend, Matt Holtz. He's been on the podcast before and a tremendous guy. And, I met Matt. I just cold outreach to him on LinkedIn in 2015 when I started my business and said, hey, I just started a payroll company. Looks like you guys are doing some really cool stuff. Would you be willing to just share some knowledge with me? And I have known him ever since. We didn't meet in person until 2 years ago at an IPPA event. And, I have several dozen of those stories at this point with people that I've just met across the country, and now some of them in person and some of them here and there and everywhere, that we share information on the regular, over email, over chat, over messaging, whatever it is, just to best practice share, system share. When you started talking about the systems, that's where I always want to dig in. Okay, how do you spell that? Let me put that down. We're going to look into that. Process Street. Oh, this is the third person who's mentioned Process Street. We better take a look at that. And some of those things are great, but it's also, to your point, like, how do your workflows look? How much should we be paying for this type of role? There's so much great intel that can be shared, just even in that informal capacity, that has tremendous value from people that have been in this industry. And the one thing, the reason we created this podcast in the first place is everybody in this industry is so willing to share. We're all fighting the sort of common enemies out there, right? We've all got the big nationals on our target list. We're not worried about fighting each other unless we're right next door to each other. And even then, most of us are sort of co-opetition for the most part. And so I urge people out there, don't be scared to reach out to others, and don't be scared to even start some of these informal mastermind groups to start. And going back, for those of you that have listened to multiple episodes, Paul's probably the third person to mention EOS, and literally every great business I am familiar with runs on EOS. Not everyone, but every one of my friends, peers, mentors that runs a great business, they use Traction, they use EOS. You can self-implement pieces of it. You can get it up and running. And then to Paul's point, when you're ready and you have the budget and you can pay for an implementer, then you can roll out the whole thing. And I've watched people go through the progression. We use it internally. We're in the process of, we've been using a bastardized version of it for years, and we're in the process of updating it now that we have a more formalized leadership team in place. But let's go back to more of this formal peer mentoring group, because I love what you're talking about. The YPG group, tremendous people. The impact of people in our industry getting together and sharing best practices and benchmarks versus being in a Vistage or even just a generic mastermind group, which I'm in a couple, and they're tremendously valuable. And it is great to get the perspective of people that are not in our industry. You don't want to get too isolated, but at the same time, you can't replace learning from people who have done what you're trying to do. I recently went to the YPG group, and we definitely were the smallest company in the room. And I was happy about that, because I was like, great, I have the most to gain by being here, right? Like I can learn the most from these guys. I have nothing to share with them, but they don't know that. I'll just fake it till I make it. And so why don't you share a little bit about the peer mentoring and how impactful that is?
I'll pull back again into the why I created this peer group, why I founded it. Matt, if you look at your customer base, the lowest level of relationship you're going to have with them is you're a vendor. Okay, they're just buying your services. If you want to upgrade your relationship, then you'll have a consultative partnership with them, and you'll help them run their business more efficiently and effectively, help them avoid fines and lawsuits and deal with their business. That's another level of relationship. The highest level of relationship you can have is to mentor them to run their businesses and their lives better. The moment you can put yourself into a position where you go from selling a widget as a vendor to being a coach, you've all of a sudden become a thought leader in your industry organically. But the most important thing is you're really helping your clients succeed. And that's why you need to wait. If you don't wake up every morning with the why you succeed, why you want to be in business, and what is your passion project? You see, for me, Matt, nothing makes me happier than seeing young entrepreneurs taking a little bit of risk and helping them avoid going through what I went through. That is my purpose. That's what keeps me going every day. I love it. I'm currently mentoring, I think about 15 different of my clients right now. And when I say mentoring, I'm no freaking professor. I'm just showing them, this is the AI you need to use for copywriting. This is the conversational AI you need to use for your email marketing. This is the Sife dashboard. I'm just sharing my innovation that I'm working on. So how this came about is same as you just mentioned, what a community this payroll industry is. And, we've been in it now for 6, 7 years, maybe 8 years, and they're friends. I mean, most of my clients are friends, and and I'm talking about big companies, medium companies, small companies. There's some fabric there's something in the water that the payroll industry drinks that allows this community to share, to be open, and just really amazing. And of course, the two associations, IPPA and TPG, hold everything together. So this was 4 years ago. So Jeff Garrison, we mentioned Traction. Jeff has his own model, which I think for the payroll industry is better than Traction. He calls it results on purpose, where he's taken the best of EOS, he's taken the best of other models and platforms, and he's created a EOS type of a model to help payroll companies succeed. So I hired Jeff initially to help me with my company, and he did such a great job getting us started that I sat down with him. I said, I'm so blessed that I have this business. I love I surround myself with the smartest. You mentioned Brittany, right? I mean, one of them. There isn't one employee that I have that's not an A player. I wouldn't, I'm just blessed every day to work with the team that I have. And I'm blessed every day to work with the community of clients that I have. So I said, how do I give back? And so I said, okay, there has to be a commitment. With every commitment, there's an investment, right? So you're seeing a theme here, right? So I said, okay, well, how am I going to put some skin in the game? And I realized that this community was necessary. What you just experienced, one of the groups that we have, that we put together. And I basically said, okay, I don't want to be the who to do this. I'm not a great facilitator. I'm not that guy. I'm a great visionary and a connector, and I make things happen. So I sat down with Jeff, and I actually financed Jeff for the first year. So I made it worth his while not to go look for another job because he's in a transition stage. And I compensated him for the first year out of pocket to be able to build enough members to be able to support the concept that you visited a few weeks ago. So, looking back at it right now, so I don't monetize it. I make no money in it. I'm not involved in it. It's a total who, not how, right? So I did put some cash up front to get Jeff up and running, but basically it's sponsored by Poster Elite. Okay, so my brand is out there. Okay, so let's talk about the branding side. So everybody in these groups, look, Matt, you didn't get to know me and didn't know everything that I did until you were in this peer group. So again, I don't spend money in traditional marketing. This is how I invest my funds. Okay, this is how we go to market, is we trusted advisors to this community. And we've built a reputation of being trusted advisors. It just happens that we're in the label or poster business. So that was the vision. Now, if I go back 4 years, you've seen, you look at that group that you were in the room with, look at the transitions in their lives since you should interview each one of them and ask them what was their lives before joining this group and what is their lives like now after. Major decisions. There's been transactions of buying out buying out partners, merging with companies, dealing with different software issues. But the group is connected. There's trust. There's communication. There's texting going on. It's a board of advisors of like-minded. And that, if you ask me what makes me happy, that we have hundreds of thousands of subscriptions, or do I have these groups? This is what gets my energy up.
That's
awesome. I have an amazing team that helps run my business, but this is what I want to do more of, Matt, is just to help, in particular, this community, business owners, managers. So I love the salespeople. I love the loneliest. The next group I'm going to found that I'm going to help are the sales managers. They got the loneliest freaking job in the world, worse than the entrepreneur. And they have the toughest. And I want to create a group of non-competing sales, payroll company sales managers to connect the way that we connected last week with you.
That's awesome.
But that's what Poster Elite wants to give back to this community.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I can attest to the power of the group. I defined it as an accelerated learning course when I got back, which I think Jeff really liked that explanation of what took place in the room when surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs who have done what you want to do or are trying to do what you want to do. And you're all working together. As a matter of fact, we saw one circumstance where literally the advice this individual was given inside that room could mean the difference of millions of dollars at the point of exit. No joke, millions of dollars in the next few years for this individual based on some guidance that they were given in that room that they would not have thought about on their own. So the power of surrounding yourself with people, the right who's, right? We'll keep on the Dan Sullivan theme. And I just read the book. For those of you that haven't checked out the book, Who Not How, it's a tremendous reminder and a great little guide to keep top of mind that, hey, you don't need to learn how to do everything. You need to surround yourself with the right who's. And sometimes those who's are just the people that can mentor you. Sometimes they're the people that can do something for you. You can do something for them. Sometimes they're your teammates. It could be a variety of things, but really exciting stuff. So I highly recommend for those of you that don't work with Poster Elite, we're a Poster Elite client. We love them. They're fantastic to work with. They make it super simple to provide our clients with labor law posters. Team's wonderful. Systems are wonderful. It makes it simple for us and we don't have to mess with it and keep up with all the different great stuff that Paul's built. We can just set it and forget it. And I don't even know what happens. So much like you, I got a who that handles that. It's not me. So
exactly. We your who that does the how for your clients.
That's right. That's right. I got a who internally that makes it where I don't have to know what you guys do. But no, thank you so much for your time today, Paul. It was really a delight to get to share share your story a little bit more with some new folks and just learn a little bit more about you myself.
I love it. And Matt, if we ever get to talk again, if you go to eposterservice.com, I launched that business with so creatively using who, not how. The speed, the time, and the cost will shock you. And if you go to eposterservice.com, you'll see how cool this thing is. And most probably other companies will take them $500,000 and 2 years to build it. I got it up and running in 90 days. Awesome. And I'm not talking about the website. I'm talking about the whole experience of APIs, integrating systems, making a front end talk to a back end with an opportunity for resellers and affiliates. 90 days.
That's tremendous.
Who not how?
Everybody will check it out. I'm sure eposterservice.com. And I know I will as soon as we're done. And I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Cheers. Have a good day.
If you enjoyed that episode, please share it with someone else you know who might enjoy it and learn from this. And also, please rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast player. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. And also, don't hesitate to reach out with other topics you'd like to hear more about. Thanks so much.